Welcome. In today's video, we're adding some much needed upgrades to the engine of the Squarebody. So let's get into it. Here is some of the things we're going to be doing to the truck. We're going to be doing a upgraded glow plug wiring kit from Leroy Diesel. And then we're going to be adding a analog and mechanical. So here's some of the things we'll be adding to the Squarebody. We're going to be doing a upgraded glow plug wiring harness from Leroy Diesel. From there, we're going to be doing a 6.2 and 6.5 valve cover stud kit from Quadstar Tuning, along with their brace kit for the valve covers. The valve covers on these 6.2s are notorious for leaking, so we'll be adding this kit to the truck. Then from there, since we'll have the valve covers off, I'm going to be doing a coolant block-off plate that is threaded for a temp gauge. This is a mechanical and digital temp gauge that we'll be adding, so we'll have a more accurate temp of the coolant in the truck since it's coming up to summer here in Arizona. The first thing I'm going to install is the coolant block-off plate with the temp probe for the new temp gauge. But before we get to that, I have to remove the air cleaner, the fuel filter, the vacuum pump, the intake, and all of the fuel lines to open everything up, so then I could take off the old block-off plate to install the new one. Alright, so all I did with it is just push on it with the screwdriver, and it pulled it off. That is the original coolant block-off plate, and that thing is disgusting. I'm going to get in here and hit it with the shop vac again to clean all of that up, all that gunk. I don't want that to fall into my cooling system. So I'll clean it up with the shop vac, scrape it, and hit it with an SOS pad, get it as clean as possible. And then from there, we can, clean up with some more brake cleaner, just make the best surface possible, and then put on the new coolant block-off plate. All right, now that I got the coolant block-off plate and the probe in there, the plan is now pull off the valve covers and do the studs and get those bad boys on there. I'm going to pull off the driver's side first and then the passenger, and then I'll show you guys what to do with the stud kit. Got the block cleaned up for the intake and the valve covers. The next step is putting in the studs for the valve covers. It's fairly simple. Just, take the stud. Be careful, don't drop it down in there. Just thread the stud on. I go finger tight. At least that's what I've read. Go finger tight. And then just take the Allen wrench and snug it up. That's all you got to do for them. There is 4 large ones and the rest are smaller ones. The large ones go on the bottom here. That will go for the bracket to hold the fuel lines. I'm not doing the fuel line bracket, or I might do the bracket but not the bolts and the screws that hold it all together since they're hard lines. But I will do the brackets just so I can zip tie and hold the new glow plug wire harness in place. But that's pretty much all you do, is just, if I can get that on there, snug it up and do that for all of them with the the large ones on the bottom middle, and you should be good to go. By the time I have this done, we should be ready to throw the new gaskets on there, guide them on there, and then once they're held in place, the valve covers should be dry enough to throw back on. Well, I got all the studs snug on there, and I have the gasket just pressed on. That's what I like about this stud kit, is it just holds the gasket in place. So I'm waiting for the valve covers to dry up, and then from there I can toss on the valve covers and we can start tightening all this up, and then we'll get into the glow plug setup. All right, what I have learned is installing these valve covers is a lot easier if you take the 2 longer studs out in the bottom middle. Some reason they just become all messed up, or mess up the whole installation. So, oops, got a little bit of oil on there. But it messes up the whole installation since those 2 studs are longer than the rest. But if you just take those out and then install them afterwards, it becomes a lot easier. All right, the next step is installing these braces. It's pretty simple. They just go like that, right on top of the valve covers. Let me fish this one around. Get that one tight on there, and then get that one on the bottom. And they just follow the edge of the valve cover just to hold it nice and tight on there so you don't have any leaks. Because from what I've read and seen, these valve covers are notorious for leaking. So I got this side on, as you can see, and I will get the nuts started. The torque spec for these nuts is 16 foot-pounds. So I'm just gonna get them finger tight on there like that, and then I'll go around it, you know, in a pattern and torque them all down to 16 foot-pounds. Then we should be good to go. I'll do this side, do that side, and then I'll show you guys the final product. All right, I'm really liking how those red valve covers with the hardware and the silver brackets look on there. That looks really good. And everything is torqued down to 16 foot-pounds, like the torque spec is from factory. So we should not have any leaks with these valve covers and the new brackets. Since all that is done, the next step is I'm going to get rid of the glow plug wire setup. So I got all the glow plug wires cut out of the way. I kind of cleaned up the wire loom some so everything looks better underneath here and more organized. I'm not going to hook up the new glow plug wires until after I bleed the fuel lines, because it'll just be weeping diesel fuel out of the injectors right onto the glow plugs underneath. So I really don't want to do that and cover those new wires in diesel fuel. So the plan is to install those at the very end, but we're ready to install fuel lines and then put the intake back on, the inline fuel filter and the vacuum pump, and then from there we can install the gauge, and after that put on the glow plug wires. All right, we got the airbox hooked up. We'll do the glow plug wires at the end. For now, we're going to get in the cab of the truck and hook up the temp gauge, and then we'll get it all wired in. So my plan is I'm going to run all the wiring first. There is two little connectors. This is the wire harness to power all of it, and then this one goes to the probe. What I did was taped the end that will go to the gauge to the screwdriver. So what I'll do is I'll push this through the grommet on the firewall so I don't damage the end, the connector, because it's real delicate like this one. So I'm going to push this through the firewall, pull all the wire till it's kind of tight, plug it into the probe, and then this run of wire will be good to go. And then I'll show you my plan when it comes to the power wire setup. Got the probe wire through the firewall and hooked up. I got a ground wire pushed through also for the gauge. And then right here is the wiring schematic. It goes red, white, orange, and black. Red's constant 12 volt, white's ignition 12 volt, orange is headlight 12 volt, and black is ground. So since I already got the black wire pushed through the firewall, I'm good there. And then I got these kind of ATA fuses, or, you know, piggybacks off of the fuses. So what I was going to do is wire in each of these to each of these wires here, you know, just like that. And then I can, you know, just hook up to the headlights, hook up to whatever runs off the ignition, and then a constant 12 volt. So I don't have to splice anything. I could just plug them into the fuse block and plug the wire into the back, and we'll be good to go. So I'll get these wired up and plugged in so you guys can see. All right, we're in business. As you can see, I have the 3 jumpers coming off the fuse box. Just as a little tip, if you can maybe see, you need to double fuse each of those jumpers with the matching fuse to what's in the fuse box. So each one of them takes 2 fuses or will not work. It wasn't working for me, so I thought I had a bad gauge, but then I just said screw it, and I double fused them, and it's working. So here is the gauge. I'll set this guy down real quick. Click the key on, it resets. I don't know why it flickers like that, but it is going. You see how bright it is when you turn on the headlights? It gets dim, so it's not overwhelming at night while you're driving. Turn it off, gets back to being brighter. So I think we're good to go. I will clean up the wire setup going into the fuse box, and then I'll clean up all these wires, then I'll show you the location where I'm gonna mount the gauge. Well, this is the setup I got. It's a little gauge holder with a single tab for the back to mount, and then where that Phillips screw is right there is where I'll be mounting the gauge, so you can see it while you're driving. Then I got the wires tucked up away and zip tied out of the way for the gauge. So I'll build the gauge setup. I'm gonna bolt this to here, and then it goes through and clamps and everything. Then I'll back out that screw right there and mount it all up. You guys will see the final product. All right, from where we're sitting, this is how it is. It dims, it turns back on, or gets bright. From where I'm sitting, I know I need a new steering wheel. Looks like crap. But just peek over the keys, or while you're driving, just peek over and look at the temp gauge. So I am extremely happy with where that is. Shouldn't be able to hit it or anything. Put my foot on the gas. Yeah, it's right down by your knee, kinda. It should be good while you're driving. Yeah, switching over to the brake, the gas. It's good. I am extremely happy with this spot. So I'll clean up the cab a little bit, and then from there, let's install the glow plug wires. So we're on to installing the wires that go to the glow plugs, the heavy duty kit. And we have an issue. The passenger side wires are not long enough. And that's because the glow plug controller is on the driver's side fender when it's actually supposed to be on the back of the block, somewhere back there. So we have an issue. The driver's side reaches no problem, but the passenger side doesn't. So I talked to Leroy, I'm guessing at Leroy Diesel, and he says I have two options. I either relocate the glow plug controller back to the back of the block where it came originally 40 years ago, or I just chop the end off of the wires and just extend it out far enough to reach the glow plug controller. And I don't really want to relocate everything back to the back of the block, so I'm just gonna chop the wires, or the wire end, and extend it. So that's, you know, that's not Leroy Diesel's fault or anybody's fault. It was just whoever relocated that glow plug controller however many years ago made this step a little hard, but no big deal, because when it goes out in the future, inevitably it is at least right here and not on the back of the block. So I will get to replacing these wires, cut that off, crimp on a new lead, and let's get these installed. All right, got the glow plug wires ran on the passenger side, zip tied it along the fuel rails, along the back side, ran it along the firewall. It's that bright red sheath. I shrink wrapped it, butt connected it right there to a thicker piece of wire, ran it down and to the glow plug controller right there, along with the driver's side one, which is zip tied and in place. So we're good to go. I'll just tighten this up, make sure we're good. I will do a test light on each of the wires and glow plugs to make sure it turns on where they're getting power, and if they are, we're good to go. I'll put the intake back on this, or the air cleaner back on it, and then we will start it up and pull it up onto some ramps to burp the coolant. Well, I like how I guess accurate this gauge is, going up by a degree, 1 degree at a time. That's pretty awesome. I didn't expect it from this gauge. So that's pretty cool. But we are burping the air bubbles out of the truck right now. It's going to be idling for a while because for some reason it is hard to get air bubbles out of this truck. We're on the last step. We're taking all the air bubbles out of the cooling system of the truck. I am going to call it a video because this step takes forever. But if you want to do the same thing to your vehicle, I will have links to everything that I used down below in the description of the video. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye, you guys.